giving police an opportunity to crack this case.
Metro Toronto Police Service Sexual Assault Squad members found Carla through her family and interviewed her.
The moment they left, she called George Walker's house, the lawyer, and made an appointment to go and see him. And she was so bold and so sure of herself that she actually got the cops who had interviewed her to drive her down to the lawyer's house in Niagara Falls.
She tells him this absolutely incredible story. You can't believe what I've been involved in.
Her attorney meets with an Ontario prosecutor to discuss the videotapes that Carla says she and Paul made of their crimes. They also talk about a plea bargain for Carla in exchange for her testimony against Paul.
As a result of Carla's information, all of a sudden they had some evidence of a link.
On February 17, 1993, Paul Bernardo is arrested at his home on the Scarborough rape charges. But police still don't have enough evidence to arrest him for the homicides.
This gentleman is Paul Bernardo. He's under arrest for various accounts of sexual assault.
The night of his arrest, Paul seems unfazed by what is going on around him, as shown in this police videotape obtained by MSNBC.
So what's going to happen from here, Paul? How do you feel about going to jail? No comment? No comment?
Always a reason for your denial.
The next month, Carla is admitted to Northwestern Hospital for psychiatric evaluation. Her attorney also has another psychiatrist evaluate Carla, who later says, at the time of the assault on her sister Tammy, Carla showed signs of a battered wife in the making. A diagnosis that doesn't sit well with some, including Dr. Fred Berlin, an associate professor with the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine. Although Berlin has not professionally evaluated Carla, he has studied her case file.
It's not that Carla reached the point where she couldn't stand it anymore and killed Paul, something that people would probably have had a little bit more sympathy for, knowing what we know now. She stood by or even actively participated in the killing of innocent victims. That's not what battered spouse syndrome is typically all about.
On February 19, 1993, police begin a 71-day search of the home on 57 Bayview, looking for any and all evidence, including the infamous videotapes which Carla had already discussed with police. But they are unable to find them. After the police's search warrant expires, they inform Paul Bernardo's attorney, Ken Murray, that their hunt has been unsuccessful. But then, anxious to keep the tapes from prying eyes, Paul Bernardo handwrites his attorney a letter and draws a map that will lead him to the videotapes, which are hidden in the upstairs bathroom ceiling. The letter reads, "If you cannot reach them, pull down the ceiling in that area. They are most definitely there." Note, very important.
Sure enough, with some little rethinking of just which way the map was configured, they found the right pot light, stuck their hand in there, and bingo, out dropped these 6 videotapes. And they kept them.
The defense team has no legal obligation to inform the prosecution of their find. So, the prosecution, still lacking evidence in the homicide charges against Paul, needs Carla as a witness more than ever.
Here's her lawyer saying, look, without her, you don't have a case. You can't convict Paul Bernardo of anything.
We didn't have enough evidence to prosecute Paul Bernardo. And if that's what it took to prosecute Paul Bernardo, then, it had to be done.
On May 14, 1993, a plea bargain for Carla Leanne Homolka is finalized.
She would be charged with the offense of manslaughter of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. And she would be given a sentence of 12 years.
4 days later, Paul is charged with the double homicides of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. On July 6, 1993, Carla is sentenced to a 12-year prison term, Meanwhile, Paul's attorney, Ken Murray, still retains those all-important videotapes, just as his client advised him to. But more than a year later, he resigns from the case. He then turns over the tapes to Paul Bernardo's new attorney, who then gives the videos to police. Eventually, Ken Murray is charged with obstructing justice. Murray argued that he believed he didn't have to turn the tapes over and intended to use them at the trial to incriminate Carla. Later, Murray is cleared of all charges. John Rosen and his partner Tony Bryant take over Paul Bernardo's case. And according to Tony Bryant, the discovery of the tapes caused a firestorm of outrage.
Well, of course, once the tapes became public and everybody could see what happened to Carla and then realized that she'd gotten the deal of the century, there was a tremendous outcry of, this isn't right.
The point is that these videotapes make the case against both of them a no-brainer. I mean, you could essentially take 30 stills from the videos, throw them in front of a jury, and have a conviction in two hours.
But prosecutors have already made a deal with Carla.
After I saw them, of course, I wished that things could have been different, but unfortunately, there wasn't much at that point that we could do about it.
People who have seen the tape say they not only show Carla actively participating in the rape of her sister Tammy, but also show her sexually abusing Jane Doe, a critical incident that she never told police. And with this, her deal comes under heavy fire, as it required her to be forthright, truthful, and complete.
They could have rescinded the deal. They had every good reason to do it. They even had legal justification to do it, and they decided not to.
According to a source close to the case, some believe the prosecution from day one was attempting to paint Carla as a victim rather than a perpetrator.
He used to make me kneel on the floor in the middle of the bedroom and make me stare straight ahead, and he would walk around me in circles and kick me. And I wasn't allowed to look, so I wouldn't know when it was coming.
And there are those who would argue that this sort of image, Carla under Paul's control, was self-serving on the part of the prosecution.
It was an excuse contrived by the government to explain, try and explain, create a subterfuge about their relationship with her.
But Carla's deal remains in effect.
Let's make no mistake about it, the prime mover in this case was Paul Bernardo. And if that's what it took to prosecute Paul Bernardo, then it had to be done.
When we come back,
she may indeed have been battered and mistreated, and that may have had a significant impact on her. And there were times where she could have helped these victims out of his presence, where indeed she didn't.
Well, he raped her when I was there, and I think he made me leave twice.
Why did he make you leave?
I don't know.
prosecutors have made a deal with Carla Homolka for the homicides of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, and is now preparing to try Paul Bernardo on his own. But some believe that the lethal dynamics of Paul and Carla as a couple cannot and should not be overlooked. Dr. Fred Berlin is an associate professor at Johns Hopkins University. Although he has never professionally evaluated Carla Homolka, he has studied her case.
All we know is that he did not kill anybody prior to his involvement with Carla, and that at least 3 different women, including Carla's sister, were dead after that involvement.
I think one of the reasons that he wanted me to kill the next girl was to make me more involved.
She may indeed have been battered and mistreated, and that may have had a significant impact on her, and there were times where she could have helped these victims out of his presence, where indeed she didn't.
Well, he raped her when I was there, and I think he made me leave twice.
Why did he make you leave?
I don't know. And now that I look back, I think how stupid. I mean, I should have gone to the police from day one. But my mind was so messed up.
There's 2 possibilities. One, that he simply was escalating and would have killed anyway. The other possibility, though, is that her influence somehow impacted upon him in a way that made him or the couple more dangerous, and that the deaths of these women had as much to do with her as it did with him.
At Paul's trial, he submits a not guilty plea on all charges. The horrific videotapes of Paul and Carla assaulting Tammy Homolka, Leslie Mahaffey, and Kristen French are played for the jury. The rest of the courtroom is only able to listen.
When the first tape was being shown, we were sitting in very comfortable chairs, but the chairs sit inside like church pews, so there's a wooden wall behind the chairs, and I found myself pushing my chair back into the wall, and I think I may have broken that wall.
Leslie Mahaffey's mother, Debbie, is in the courtroom.
It felt like abandoning her not to be in the courtroom with her, that surely the pain that I would feel by hearing her would be nothing compared to the pain that she would have endured. I have never heard her scream other than delight, but I've never heard her cry in pain. 3 minutes, 3 seconds, I don't know. I knew it was her.
My heart just bled every day for the Mahaffis and the French families. And so you could hear them gasping and crying and sobbing, and you just wanted to go and console them because you felt so badly for them.
On August 31st, the jury is sequestered for verdict deliberations. The next day, Paul Bernardo's verdict is read. Guilty on all counts. Paul Kenneth Bernardo is sentenced to 25 years in prison, the maximum allowed by Canadian law. In order to avoid another high-profile trial for the Scarborough rapes, the judge declares him a dangerous offender, extending his jail term indefinitely.
I think everyone was pleased to see justice done. It was a general feeling that justice was done in terms of the case against Paul Bernardo. I think a lot of people were and are, for good reason, still disappointed about the circumstances with Carla Homolka.
Carla Homolka spent 12 years behind bars and was released in July 2005.
I can't imagine that she could walk out of prison and find anywhere to live in Canada where she doesn't look over her shoulder or wonder. And I think that's a good thing.
There's never been a crime or more evidence of a crime and more explicit evidence of a crime that would say, you know, your instincts are to put these people out of their misery and vanquish them from the earth. Now, of course, I don't advocate that. Personally, I'm against the death penalty. But is she coming out of prison? What an abhorrent aberration of justice.
After Bernardo's murder conviction, the judge sealed the infamous sex tapes. In January 2005, author Stephen Williams pleaded guilty to mistakenly violating a gag order. Prosecutors say he published some of Bernardo's victims' names on a website, material that must have come from the banned tapes. Williams was given 3 years probation and 75 hours community service. As for Carla Homolka, she was released in July 2005. Because she pleaded guilty to manslaughter and not a sex crime, she will not be required to disclose her new address on Canada's National Sex Offender Registry. That's our report. I'm John Siegenberg.
For information on upcoming programs, go to Prime.